good to be here. I'd like to thank all the organizers for inviting me to speak here today about the Bridges Conference. Okay, so Bridges is an annual conference about connections between mathematics and art, music and science. And there's a website for the conference. It's bridgesmathart.org. I'd encourage you to look at that. There's quite a bit of resources there. The past art exhibits are shown there online. And also any day now, there's going to be a database come online that has all of the papers ever presented at Bridges. So for all the different conferences, you can get download a PDF. So literally hundreds of papers on math art will be available at the Bridges website due to Craig Kaplan's work on that. Let me take a few minutes to talk about who I am, what my background is. As an undergraduate, I majored in physics and mathematics, and I got a PhD then in electrical engineering, and worked for several years as a researcher at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. JPL is the laboratory that did the Voyager spacecraft and also more recently the Mars rovers like Curiosity. So that was a very exciting place to work. Just about 20 years ago now, I started my own small business called Tessellations. And maybe 10 years or so ago, I started an online store called Math Art Fun. I also coordinate 2 annual exhibits of mathematical art, one at the Bridges Conference and one at the Joint Mathematics meetings. And the Joint Mathematics meetings is the big annual meeting in the US for professional mathematicians. About 6,000 attendees, most of whom are professors of mathematics at either colleges or universities in the US, but also other countries. And as Christoph mentioned, I do my own mathematical art as well. And I have a few websites that might be good for you to look at or useful for you. Let me just briefly describe some of those. First of all, this is my company website. It's just tessellations.com. And there are various choices in the menu on the left here. The top one says our products and describes the various products we make that are related to mathematics and math education. I've written a few books. The most recent one is called Designing and Building Tessellated Polyhedra. There's a workshop at 4 o'clock today on this topic. And that's kind of a companion to an earlier book that was called Designing and Drawing Tessellations. And this book is designed to teaching you how to make your own Escher-like tessellations, in which the tiles are birds or lizards or things like that. And on the website, you can download the table of contents and see in detail what's in the book. And also, there are a couple of sample pages from the book as well. So this is a template for a particular set of matching rules to create a particular type of tessellation. A few years ago, we bought out another publisher. And the original author of these books retired. His name was Russell Jacobs. And these are a set of activity books for math students. These are very popular with math teachers in the US. And I'll show you an example of how these work. For each book, there's a list in the website that shows some of the exercises in the book. And also there's some samples, table of contents, sample activity as a PDF. So in these exercise books, the student works a problem and gets an answer and then searches for that answer on the grid. Any box with that answer, the student then shades according to the shading grid. And when he finishes, he has some sort of symmetrical design. So it's kind of a reward for doing the work and also allows him to kind of self-check his work because the design should be symmetrical. Our first products were actually Tessellation puzzles, such as in the garden here. These are foam puzzles. The pieces are recognizable things like butterflies and flowers. So it's an Escher-like puzzle, but unlike Escher's designs, that only fit together one way, these are designed to fit together lots of different ways. So you can use one puzzle to explore different types of symmetry. And more recently, we focused more on the books and also some math manipulatives, which are kind of hands-on visual classroom aids. We have, for example, a hands-on trigonometry proof set. This is made of magnet-backed foam with print on it. An algebra block set that relates algebraic quantities to area and volume to make a kind of a visual idea of basic algebraic relations to make them more accessible and kind of tangible to the student. And we also have some geometry manipulatives. This is a conic section set. All of these come with worksheets as well. And there's a geometric shape set that has formulas and whatever printed on it. In addition to a set geared at teaching about the properties of numbers, such as the Fibonacci series and Pascal's triangle and that sort of idea. The online website or online store, Math Art Fun, sells all of the tessellation products, but lots of other things as well. And it also happens to be the registration site for the Bridges Conference. In addition, you can buy past Bridges proceedings, art catalogs, and CDs from this site. And there are things like Escher ties and t-shirts, polyhedra construction set, polyhedral dice, knot puzzles and books, just a variety of things that relate math and art. Another website I'll talk about is my art website. This is organized by topic. Most of my artwork is computer prints, some hand prints, and more recently some ceramics. I have a number of prints on tessellations. Some of these are Escher-alike. This is a dragon design that morphs from white dragons to black dragons with a tessellation in the middle. See, this one has a fractal tessellation of fish tiles that kind of look like a wave. Here's an abstract tessellation, fractal tessellation, which I actually noticed is still hanging outside the room here. A print of that one. And there's some other fractal prints. For example, this fractal curve print is in the art exhibit at this year's Bridges Conference. This is a Fractal Rings design. And I've done quite a few fractal trees using photographic imagery. A close-up of one of those. This one actually is created from a photograph of a small portion of a rose bush and put together to make a fern-like fractal. And these have been collected in a book I've called Fractal Trees. Also, let's see, I have some knot prints. There's one knot design. Now, by definition, a knot is only a single strand. So this is one strand that winds around in a self-similar fashion. So it's an iterated knot design. And there's some more three-dimensional knot designs. This is based on the trefoil knot. Let's see, more recently I've done some work with ceramics. This is a pair of sculptures. One is a cube inside of an octahedron, the other is an octahedron inside of a cube. These are unglazed clay, a red clay and a black clay. And I have some knot ceramics as well. This is a link to interwoven strands with 6 crossings. So that's a pretty good idea of what I do and what I've been doing for several years now. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, getting on to bridges. The Bridges Conference was first held in 1998, and it brings together artists, researchers, and educators for lectures, exhibitions, and workshops that explore the relationship between mathematics and the arts. Not only the traditional visual arts like painting and sculpture, but also music, theater, and new media such as videos and animations. The early bridges were held in Winfield, Kansas. The main organizer, Reza Sarhangi, was a professor at Southwestern College in Winfield for several years. That's why they were held in Kansas. And it's grown to the point where it's now held internationally throughout North America and Europe. Typically, we have participants from around 30 countries. The Bridges Conference is the math art conference in the world and has been held in a variety of locations, such as the Banff Center in Canada, in collaboration with the International Research Station for Mathematical Innovations and Discovery. Banff, Canada is in the western part of Canada, in the heart of the Canadian Rockies. It's a really very beautiful setting. The conference has also been held in London at London University in collaboration with the London Knowledge Lab. I've gone to all of the Bridges conferences except the first one, and also the 2003 conference, which was in Granada, Spain, which is of course where the Alhambra is located. Bridges was actually held in Spain a second time at the University of the Basque Country in San Sebastian, and one of the highlights that year was a field trip to the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao, which was designed by the architect Frank Gehry, and quite an interesting building. The conference has also been held in Leeuwarden, the Netherlands, which is the birthplace of MC Escher. And this year will be the second year it's been held in the Netherlands. In 2010, it was held here in Hungary. 2011, it was held in Coimbra, Portugal, at Coimbra University, one of the oldest universities in Europe. Last year, the conference was held at Towson University for the second time. Towson is where Reza Sarhangi is currently a professor. So here's the logo for the 2013 Bridges Conference in Enschede. The logo actually was designed by Rinus, and talks will be held at the Saxion University of Applied Sciences. In 2014, we're very excited to hold Bridges in East Asia for the first time. It'll be in Seoul, and I think it'll be quite exciting. We get a lot of new attendees from countries like China and Korea and Japan, and I'm sure we'll see some really exciting stuff that we didn't even know about at that conference. So I'd like to show several slides from past Bridges conferences. This is one of the plenary sessions. This is in Page, Hungary. There's lots of time at Bridges for kind of informal play with mathematics. People can bring their own stuff and set it out and share. People here are playing with some tiles that have some sort of Islamic theme. And the building of polyhedra is also always something that happens at Bridges, usually using Zoom tool, which is a ball and stick plastic construction system. This is a sculpture by Erdely Daniel, one of his Spydron structures. In this photo, Weihart is looking at a thermosphere. And Dick Termes is an artist based in South Dakota in the US, and he's developed a 6-point perspective system which allows him to depict an entire 4-pi steradian scene onto the surface of a sphere. And he's been painting these spheres, which he calls thermospheres, for over 30 years now. He's spoken at a few of the Bridges conferences. This is another sculpture by a Hungarian artist named Antal Kella, and these things actually move and can be reconfigured. These are origami pieces called kusudamas, which is a Japanese word. These are done by Krystyna Burczyk, who is a math teacher and artist based in Krakow, Poland. This is actually a commercial product. It's a rubber kind of ball based on a polyhedron, and this was designed by Raymond Aschheim. Every year, one of the activities at Bridges is the building of a giant Zoom tool structure. And this goes on. During the course of the conference, lots of people participate and help build the thing. And then they assemble modules, and usually just in time for the end of the conference, they get it finished. And so this is, I believe, done in Banff, Canada in 2009. That's always quite a project. This photo was from the art exhibit in Leeuwarden. And these sculpture in the foreground were done by a Dutch artist named Roland de Jong Rolando. This is Magnus Weniger. He's very well known for his paper polyhedra, pioneered a variety of different models and has books on that topic. He went to several of the early Bridges conferences. He currently can no longer travel. He's actually in his 90s. This is another scene of people just playing with mathematical tiles or toys. I think this picture was taken in Page. And this artwork was done by Vladimir Bulatov. It's based on an Escher design, which you might recognize, but he's modified this. This is a hyperbolic tiling. And so in addition to the tiles getting infinitesimally small at the boundary, they also get very small at a center hole here. This is actually a custom design made to fit a CD. So this is printed on this year's conference CD. This is one of my own artworks that was shown at Bridges. This is a fractal knot. So it's a single strand which kind of goes in and back out and has the self-similarity you see in fractals. It's based on a trefoil knot. This is a sculpture presented at Bridges based on a spiral. Looks kind of like an ammonite fossil. Now this sculpture was done by Brent Collins. This is cast in metal. Brent is an artist based in Kansas. He was an important figure in the early Bridges conferences in Kansas. He does sculpture based on surfaces, ribbons and other surfaces. He's quite well known. And in fact, the Bridges logo, shown on the right here, is a silhouette of one of Brent's sculptures called Genesis. And this is Brent standing next to a metal casting of this sculpture that's been installed on the campus at Southwestern College. Okay, so let's see. The Bridges organization has a board of directors, and it has 4 members on that board: George Hart, Craig Kaplan, Reza Sarhangi, and Carlos Secan. George Hart is a former professor at Columbia University and also Stony Brook University, both in New York State. George was responsible for developing much of the content at the National Museum of Mathematics, which opened in New York City last fall. And if you ever have a chance to attend that, I encourage you to do so. A lot of really neat interactive exhibits at that museum. George is a world expert on polyhedra and also a well-known sculptor who does sculptures based on polyhedra. And several of his sculptures are installed in public places. He currently is primarily creating videos about mathematics and sees his mission as making math fun or showing people how math is fun. Craig Kaplan is a computer scientist, professor at the University of Waterloo, which is near Toronto, Canada. Craig is interested in tiling. He's interested in Islamic art. He's written programs to generate Islamic type tilings and also to morph from one tiling to another and that kind of thing. Reza, as I said, is the lead organizer. In addition to that, he's a professor of mathematics at Towson University. Reza is interested in Persian art and Persian mathematics, especially the history and early discoveries of mathematics in that culture. Carlo is a computer scientist at the University of California, Berkeley, which is one of the best universities in the US for engineering. And Carlo is interested in computer modeling of mathematical surfaces. Lately, he's been looking at Klein bottles and Boy surfaces and new ways to configure those to make kind of sculptural mathematical models, which he likes to print using 3D printing techniques, and he's cast some of these in metal as well. So this is George on the left here with one of his small sculpture there in metal. This is Craig with some sort of Islamic window. I don't know what that project was actually. Here's Reza doing what he does best, which is to talk and promote bridges. And Carlo with one of his 3D printed models. Let me just briefly show you a resource related to George's videos, which I think are very much worth watching. George currently does a monthly series of videos for the Simons Foundation. And you can see these. This shows the main page for them. These are about 6 minutes long. If you click on them, you actually watch the video. For example, the last one was called the Goldberg Polyhedra. Because of their aesthetic appeal, organic feel, and easily understood structure, Goldberg Polyhedra have a surprising number of applications ranging from golf ball nipples, patterns to nuclear particle detector arrays. So that's what that one is about. One on bicycle tracks, symmetric structures, atoms and how they relate to geometric building block structures. This one's on knots, and there's older ones as well. In addition to these videos, George has a lot of shorter videos on YouTube. And in addition, his daughter, Vi Hart, has lots of videos on YouTube. And Vi actually has a huge following, mainly among girls of school age. She does very entertaining presentations about mathematical topics. So I definitely encourage you to get on YouTube and search George Hart and Vi Hart, that's V-I-H-A-R-T, and watch some of those videos. Okay, let's get back to the slideshow now. Okay, the Bridges Conference is organized around 10 principal events or features. The first one is the general sessions. These are held in the morning. These are plenary talks, invited speakers. These are longer talks, like 45 minutes, for example, given by people who are distinguished, recognized experts doing some sort of work related to math and art. And this shows some of the past speakers. Each conference there is a keynote speaker or main speaker. Last year that was John Cromwell Mather. He is a cosmologist and won the Nobel Prize in Physics for his work on the Cosmic Background Explorer satellite, along with George Smoot. This year we're lucky to have another Nobel Prize winner in chemistry, Sir Harold Walter Kroto. He was awarded the prize along with Curl and Richard Smalley for their discovery of Buckminster-Fullerene, or carbon-60. That's a molecule made up of 60 carbon atoms that occupy the vertices of a truncated icosahedron. So a really, really amazing molecule found in nature, as shown here. In addition to these invited talks, there are contributed talks. So anyone can submit a paper online. That's done by February 1st, I think. And the papers are reviewed by more than one reviewer. And if they're accepted, they're printed in the conference proceedings, and then you give a talk at the conference. And this shows two speakers giving their talks, doing some sort of hands-on demonstration. That's not required, of course, but it's kind of nice to do that. And since we have time, I'm going to show you a few of the talks from this year's conference, a few of the papers rather, to give you an idea of what those are like and also what people are doing that's new and exciting in this area. So I'm not sure why that pulled off to the side. Come back. Okay. This paper is by Bob Bosch. He's a regular at Bridges. He's a professor of math at Oberlin College in Ohio. And Bob was interested in optimization computer problems, like the traveling salesman problem. That's a famous problem. He does things called integer programs. In this paper, he's using those to look at tiles and making loops and labyrinths out of those tiles. So he's marking square tiles in different ways and using a computer program to find patterns using these tiles. So he describes how he sets up the program, the variables, some constraints. He designs the program to try to find symmetric solutions. And first he looks at loops created with the program. So this is a 10 by 12 array of tiles, and these are 3 different loops which have twofold rotational symmetry about their center points. And then he shows some loops which have mirror symmetry about the center, both about a vertical line and about a horizontal line, which means they also have twofold rotational symmetry. So there's some of those. He's actually made a game out of this using an existing kind of tilting puzzle platform where you use knobs to roll a marble through a maze. So he also does woodworking and mathematical art. And then he goes on to look at labyrinths designed using the same program. In this case, you have a starting point and a stopping point. And so this is actually what's called a Hamiltonian path, where you have a single path that touches every tile. And these are 3 Hamiltonian paths that have some symmetry to them that he found using his program. Here's George Hart's paper this year. And George has done a rather whimsical study of making rolling cookie cutters. And so what he's done is he's written a program for Mathematica. Mathematica is a mathematics software package. And this program creates rollers which are then printed in a 3D printer. And George uses those to make freeze pattern cookies. So here's an example. This is an Escher lizard design. And he takes the boxed area there and copies that. He puts it in his Mathematica code, and it generates this cylinder, which he prints on his own little 3D printer. And then he uses that to roll out impressions and cookies. Here's another example using a famous Escher horseman print. And these impressions on the right are done in Play-Doh, which is a kind of kids' clay. I've actually made some ceramics using these rollers too in the last few months. This is a Hittite design. One of the inspirations for these was rolling seals. This is actually a Mesopotamian cylinder seal, and George recreated that to create those impressions. Knots are another kind of popular math art theme, and this paper talks about designing 6-fold symmetric knot designs. And this is a single strand, a complicated design that has overall 6-fold rotational symmetry. And this is derived from a pretty simple mosaic here. This is a well-known pattern, Rossetti calls it. And he adds some extra circles to this and then modifies that to make a knot out of that rosette. And he describes some rules for doing that, and he's actually made some acrylic tiles which you can play with based on this. Then he goes on to do some plane filling designs using the same idea. Each of these has 3 not quite strands, but 3 pieces. And they'll have the property that if you take away one of the 3, the other 2 will fall apart. That same property is shared by the Borromean rings, which you might be familiar with. That's called a Brunerian loop, I think. And here's a 6-fold example with the 3 pieces that he's created using that. Here's a paper by Paul Galliunas, another regular at Bridges. And Paul's looking at mad-weave polyhedra. A mad weave is a three-strand weave of the type shown here. And Paul does some analysis of possible color cycles for mad weave. Different patterns you can get using those. So here's a hexagonal tessellation. This is kind of in stripes. He uses two colors to get a tessellation of the Star of David plus rhombus. And he's going to make polyhedra out of these. So he goes on to look at constraints on corners, where you get a corner where three faces of a polyhedra meet, or more than three faces. And then these are polyhedra he's made using this weaving process. So these all are based on triangular faces. They're kind of rounded because the springy material does that. So you have some tetrahedra, octahedra, icosahedron with the different color combinations. See, this is Reza's paper this year. And he's talking about Islamic tiling and a traditional Islamic or Persian technique called tahib. So first he looks at some pentagrams and decagrams, which are 5-pointed and 10-pointed stars. He looks at some of the tilings that have been shown with those in Islamic art. And he analyzes some of the shapes that occur in those tilings. And these are well known. There's Persian names for these various shapes. So here on the left is a known Persian tiling. On the right is a design, Reza made a new design using these building blocks. And he shows how you can color blocks to create variations. Then he talks about the art of tazib, however it's pronounced. This is a traditional art form which uses leaf and flower motifs. And to do this, you draw the geometric underpinning, and then you draw the flower designs. Then you actually hand paint these things. And these are very beautiful geometric designs. And Reza then collaborated with an artist who does this kind of work to make a collage of hand-painted and computer-generated artwork design. So one final example, let's see. This paper is by Phil Webster. It also has some Islamic character. This is also deals with fractals, another popular math art topic. And he shows initially that some Islamic designs have a little bit of self-similarity, but just on two levels. So for example, this bow tie shape over here appears both as a group of tiles and as a single tile. And he kind of does his own method of looking at star polygons, talks about some Islamic motifs. He analyzes different ways stars can fit together. There's three basic ways. Then he makes some plane filling tilings that have a little bit of self-similarity but are not quite fractals. He then shows some fractal arrangements of star polygons, the underlying framework for those, and then he modifies these to get Islamic lattice patterns that are fractal in nature. So this shows one of these and goes on to show some more examples. So that should give you a flavor of the kind of papers and talks you'll see at a Bridges conference. Let me go back to this guy. Okay, so if you recall, that was the second key feature in Bridges. There's a third type of paper or talk, and that are the workshop sessions. These are about 2 hours long. The workshops provide opportunities for participants to watch and work hands-on with established contributors who are crossing the math art boundary. And a lot of these are geared toward math teachers. These are hands-on, and you can actually learn things you can take back and use in your own classroom with your students. Next we have the mathematical art exhibition. As Christoph said, I'm in charge of this aspect of bridges. These photographs show some of the exhibits we've had in the past. The first year there was an art exhibit was I think 2000, and we had I think 10 artists, so very small, and it's just grown and grown and gotten bigger every year. This year we have 130 artists and 300 artworks. So once again we'll have a world record for the largest math art exhibit ever assembled in one location. So it's really quite amazing to see this thing come together in a single day as a physical art exhibit. And the exhibit is up for the duration of the conference to people to look at and visit. So let me show you some of the artworks we have this year. There's a lot of computer art, as you'd imagine, a lot of computer prints and also 3D computer sculpture. But there are different mediums as well. For example, this is a quilt by Jane Adler. This is a computer print done by Bob Bosch, whose paper I just showed. This is again a computer-generated image. This is a portrait of Touché using Touché tiles. And the 3D printing is getting more and more important as an element in bridges as the technology gets more accessible and less expensive. This is a three-dimensional fractal designed by Germain Bruchet and created using 3D printing. This piece also uses 3D printing. It's by Francesco Di Comite. Many of you might be familiar with anamorphic art. Usually you have a cylinder that's mirrored, and that cylinder sits on a flat print. And there's a distorted image in the flat print that's undistorted in the mirror. And it's quite a magical effect. You see the image in the mirror that you can't see in the flat print. And so what Francesco has done is extend this to 3 dimensions. And so you have this weird kind of lobed structure sticking out, which he's calculated the shape of. And if you look right down the middle at a mirrored sphere, you see this nested pentagram. This is an abstract piece done by Juan Escudero. This is actually the backdrop for this year's conference proceedings cover. And Juan does calculated, he actually calculates these using algebraic equations. So this is an example of computational computer art. Here's something kind of different. This is a fabric. It has a tessellation, also incorporates organic light-emitting diodes. This is done by Lo Fijs and Marina Toders in Holland. This is a large polyhedron made of birch plywood. This must have been a huge amount of work. I'm really looking forward to seeing this in person. I can't imagine how many hours went into this. This piece is an example of something called Tessellation Origami. In this form of origami, you start with a piece of paper and you crease it into a very fine grid. And you see this fine underlying crease pattern. And once you've done that, you can fold it up and make a sort of different repeating kind of tessellated structures. So this one shows a group of 7 like flowers that are in a regular arrangement. This is the piece that was in Reza's paper done in collaboration with Megjelenés, and she's the traditional Tayyib artist, and then Reza did the computer part of this. This is done by Craig Kaplan. These are interwoven strips of paper, and again, Craig likes Islamic stuff, so a lot of Islamic designs this year. This is done by Margaret Kepner. She uses magic squares, which are these arrays of numbers that add up, the same in different directions. And she uses different ways to base artworks on magic squares. She has a really nice sense of color. These are more 3D prints. These are done by Saul Schleimer and Harry Segerman. These are calculated mathematical surfaces, which are quite attractive as sculpture also. This is one of the more whimsical entries. This is done by Nick Sayers. I don't know if you know what spirograph is. It was a very popular toy in the US when I was a kid. And spirograph uses these gears to make these symmetric patterns. And so what Nick has done is made a giant spirograph generator using a bicycle. So he does a lot of really fun, interactive kind of artwork projects. He's a professional artist. This is a sculpture made from wood based on polyhedra, done by Koos Verhoef. Okay, now that was the fourth part of Bridges. The fifth feature in Bridges is the Short Movie Festival. This is a relatively new feature in Bridges. I think this will be the fourth year we've done this. The coordinators are Nathan and Amy Selikoff. Nathan is a professional artist. He's based in Florida. He has his own business called Digital Awakening Studios. He also runs the Bridges website and the art submission site. The image on the right here is a still from George Hart's entry into the movie festival this year. So the movie festival is about a 2-hour event, one afternoon at Bridges. We also have the theater evening. This is not held every year, but it's been pretty regular of late. This is a one-time performance of a play or short plays with a theme that connects art with either mathematics or science. And the coordinator of the theater evening is Steve Abbott. He's a professor of mathematics at Middlebury College in the US. He also is a co-editor of Math Horizons magazine, which is a magazine published in the US for undergraduates in mathematics. Also this year, for the second year in a row, we have a presentation by a group called Mimematics. And they use mime and mathematics to make a really entertaining show. In addition, we sometimes have dance performances. Carl Schaefer, who is shown right here, is a dancer and a regular attendee at the Bridges conferences. This is a piece called The Secret Life of Squares, a dance piece. The seventh feature or event at Bridges is a mathematical poetry reading. That's coordinated by Sarah Glass. She's a professor of mathematics at the University of Connecticut in the US. Has also written some mathematics books. This is again a growing component of Bridges. There's a poetry reading this year that lasts an hour or two one afternoon. And these are poems that involve mathematics. And people have different ideas of what mathematical poetry is, obviously, just like mathematical art means different things to different people. The Family Day is an important part of Bridges. This is an event where we try to involve the community where the conference is hosted, so not just attendees, but actual, especially kids in the community. And that's a lot of fun. That's organized by Krzysztof here. And I understand you have your own Family Day tomorrow, so you'll see what a Family Day is like if you hang around and do some of that. That's all hands-on stuff, a lot of really fun stuff to try to spread the idea that math can be fun and not just boring equations and that kind of stuff. And he's doing a really good job with that. The ninth feature of Bridges is the music night. Each year we have a kind of formal music night, which is kind of like a concert. It's put on coordinated by Dmitry Tomoshko, who is a music professor at Princeton University in New Jersey. He's a composer and also a music theorist, and has written influential articles on music theory. He's received several awards, very, very bright, energetic guy. And the music night features professional and semi-professional musicians performing compositions which have something to do with mathematics. In addition to the formal music night, we have an informal music night, which is kind of like a talent show. People can get up and do stuff. And this stuff they just kind of rehearse and get ready during the conference. Weihart coordinates the informal music night. Music has been important to Bridges since the beginning. There's several talks on music. The first few conferences, one of the highlights was Corey Surovsik, who was a Canadian violinist internationally known violinist. At the end of each morning session, Corey would get up and play some pieces and just kind of talk. He's quite interested in mathematics, so he would just kind of muse about mathematics and music and life in general, so that was a lot of fun. And finally, we have number 10 are the lasting records of the conference in the form of the British Proceedings. This is the book of the papers. It's several hundred pages long. Contributed papers are 8 pages long. And we also have an art catalog, a print catalog, which is a print version of the art exhibit that's a lasting record. The art catalog was first produced in 2009 and it is now an annual feature. This just shows some of the covers of past British Proceedings. All of those are available. These are the covers for this year. In addition to the Proceedings volume and the art catalog, and the art catalog is over 200 pages this year, very, very big catalog. We have for the first time a poetry anthology for this year's conference. We have 3 books for the first time. And we also produce a conference CD, and the CD has all 3 books on it. So if you want to save money, get the CD, you can download all that content on the CD. Once again, Bridges 2014 will be held in Seoul, South Korea at the Gwacheon National Science Museum. The dates are August 14 to 19, a little bit later than usual. This should be very exciting. We hope some of you can join us in Seoul. We take submissions of regular papers, workshop papers, short papers, artwork, short movies. Everything is submitted online, everything is reviewed, and then you find out if you're accepted and you can make your travel plans accordingly. So we hope to see some of you there, and that'll conclude my presentation. Thanks.